The first time Evan noticed the alien princess. The morning sky was red with dust, and the colony alarms were still half asleep. He was a simple human technician, dressed in an oil-stained jacket, walking across the broken ridge above Outpost Delta. The wind blew sand against his face, and half-broken antennas stuck out of the ground like the bones of a dead giant. That ridge was always silent. No birds, no noise, only the dry scratch of wind. Evan liked it that way. It gave him space to think. He had no idea that someone was watching him that day. He was fixing a damaged relay tower, his hands moving quickly through old tools and tangled wires. The sun was sharp, burning through his jacket and into his skin. He muttered to himself as he worked, because the silence felt too big to leave alone. And then, as he tightened the last bolt, he felt something he could not explain, a weight on the world behind him, like someone breathing without sound. At first he thought it was a guard or a colonist who needed help. But guards wore heavy boots, and colonists talked too much to stay quiet. This presence was different. It was like a shadow that refused to move. Slowly, Evan turned round. Down the slope, half hidden behind pieces of fallen metal, stood a figure so still and silent that Evan wondered if she was a statue. She was tall and slim, with pale armor made of crystal plates that reflected the sun in cold blue lines. A long cloak flowed behind her, moving gently in the wind like water moving around a stone. Her eyes were bright, glowing faintly, like stars that had learned how to cry. Evan froze. His breath caught in his throat. He knew who she was, even without anyone saying her name. Everyone in the colony knew her face. She was the imperial princess of the Vale Empire, the same empire that once tried to crush humanity under white fire and iron warships. 2 years had passed since the truce, but wounds still lived in every heart. The princess did not speak. She did not move. She simply watched him. For a long moment, Evan did nothing. He just stared at her, his mind racing with questions. Was she here to threaten him? Was she spying? Why him? Why here? But her face showed no anger, no hate, not even boredom. There was only calm and something else he could not name. Then, without warning, soldiers from the colony rushed up the ridge. They surrounded Evan and the princess, rifles ready but shaking. Their voices were loud and sharp. Don't speak to her. Don't get close. Keep your eyes down. Evan blinked, confused. He had not said a word. He only saw the princess lower her head slightly, as if the shouting hurt her ears. But she still did not speak. Her silence was stronger than any threat. The soldiers pushed Evan away from her and marched him down toward the outpost. As they walked, Evan kept glancing back. The princess stayed on the ridge, silent and still. She did not leave. She did not follow, at least not yet. Later that afternoon, Evan learned the truth from the guards. They told him that ever since the truce ended the war, the princess had lived under watch inside the colony. She had not spoken a single word in 2 years. She did not speak to diplomats. She did not speak to soldiers. She did not speak to machines or doctors. She lived inside a silent world of her own. Some said she refused to speak because of pride. Others said she lost her voice in battle. Others whispered darker stories, that she carried the guilt of thousands of dead and could not bear to speak any more. But no matter what they said, nobody truly knew. Nobody even tried to find out. For the rest of that day, Evan kept thinking about her silent stare. It made his chest feel heavy in a way he did not understand. He had seen hate before. He had seen fear. He had seen emptiness. But her eyes carried something else, something almost fragile. When night fell and the colony lights flickered like dying stars, Evan walked back to his tiny room. He tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing on that ridge, quiet and alone, with those glowing eyes that looked too sad for a princess of war. And that was how the story began, not with fire, not with blood, not with shouting, but with a silent alien princess watching a human technician from a lonely ridge, and a feeling in his heart that something important had just started, even if he didn't know what. The next morning, Evan woke before the sun. The colony was quiet, and the heat had not yet begun to pierce through the metal roofs. He stepped outside, carrying his toolbox, and noticed her again, the princess standing at the edge of the ridge, watching him. Her cloak shimmered in the first light, like water rippling over ice. She did not move, not even when he waved. But Evan felt her presence like a shadow that refused to leave him. Over the next weeks, the routine became clear. She followed him everywhere, from tower to tower, across rusted bridges and cracked pathways. She stayed a few steps behind. Evan worked long hours, fixing antennas, replacing solar panels, patching communication lines, and each time he looked over his shoulder, she was there. Not helping, not speaking, just observing. At first, Evan felt nervous. His co-workers whispered when they saw her. "Why does she follow him?" One guard asked, voice low. "Careful what you say," another warned. "The princess sees more than you think." Evan did not know if he should feel honored or scared, but slowly he began to notice details others missed. The way her cloak fluttered when the wind was strong. The way her eyes followed the smallest movements of children playing near broken walls. The faint tremble in her hands when she touched something fragile, like a flower or a cracked tool. One afternoon, Evan was repairing a solar relay on top of a tall pole. The metal was hot, and his gloves were torn. As he bent over, cutting wires, he gasped when he felt a light touch on his shoulder. He looked up. There she was, holding a clean bandage and a small water bottle. Her eyes met his, and for a moment he forgot the heat, the work, and the dust. He stammered. "Thank you," she said nothing. She only nodded slightly and stepped back, letting him finish his work. Even without words, Evan felt a strange warmth in his chest, a quiet connection that seemed impossible with someone who had never spoken to a human before. Days passed like this. She never helped him directly, never gave advice, never spoke. But she always noticed when he struggled, when he was tired, when he needed support. She was like a silent guardian, a shadow moving with purpose, waiting for something he could not understand. The colony began to notice too. Some people grew nervous, some suspicious. Others whispered rumors that the princess followed Evan because of fate, prophecy, or curiosity. Some said she had seen something in him, bravery, kindness, or perhaps a spark of humanity she had never seen before. Evan did not care about rumors. He only cared about the strange pull he felt toward her, the sense that their meeting was not by chance. At night, he would sit on the edge of the colony's wall, looking at the stars, and imagine her walking alone across the desert plains. He imagined what her life must have been like, a princess trained for war, raised among the empire's cold and strict walls, carrying the weight of countless lives and deaths. Once, a sandstorm hit while Evan was repairing an antenna far from the colony. He fought to keep his balance, sand filling his eyes and mouth. When he looked up, she was there, her cloak wrapped around a small child who had been lost in the storm. She stood firm against the wind, shielding the child, humming softly in her alien language. Evan felt a chill run through him. Here was a princess, feared by an empire, risking herself to save a human child she had never met. He shouted to her, "I'll help," but she waved him back. She did not need him. And yet, even in silence, she spoke louder than anyone he had ever known. That night, Evan could not sleep. He lay in his small room, thinking of her. Her silence, her quiet strength, her strange, glowing eyes. He did not understand why she stayed with him, why she watched him, why she cared. But he felt something he had never felt before: hope. A fragile, shimmering hope that humans and the Vale Empire could find something better than war, something stronger than fear. And as he drifted into sleep, he felt her presence like a gentle weight over the ridge, a promise in the quiet desert, a shadow that had decided to follow him. Even if she never spoke a single word, the princess remained silent. But Evan knew that silence was not emptiness. It was waiting. And sometimes, he thought, the strongest words are the ones never spoken. Weeks passed, and the princess's silent presence became the rhythm of Evan's life. Every morning, she was there, watching him climb towers, crawl over broken bridges, or repair the old communication relays. She never spoke. She never moved closer than a few steps, yet Evan could feel her attention like a warm weight on his back, constant and unyielding. The colony, however, did not see it as quietly as he did. Whispers spread faster than desert fire. Soldiers, technicians, and colonists began speculating about why the princess followed him so closely. "Do you think she's spying on him?" A guard whispered to another during a meal. "Maybe she wants to learn his secrets." Another said, his voice low and nervous. Some told darker tales. They said she followed him because he reminded her of someone she lost, a brother, a friend, a soldier, maybe a human she had killed during the war. Others insisted it was a test, that she would decide whether humanity deserved mercy based on his actions alone. Evan heard none of these rumors, and he wanted nothing to do with them. He only saw what she did. He saw how she froze whenever a child ran too close to the collapsed walls. He saw her flinch at the smoke of burned metal. He saw her fingers tremble when she touched anything fragile, a broken tool, a cracked water container, even a dying plant that somehow survived the desert sun. He started to notice moments no one else would. Once, as he carried a heavy crate of spare wires, she stepped forward and brushed a loose strap from his shoulder, so lightly it could have been a shadow. He did not look at her for fear she would disappear, but the touch stayed in his mind, like a faint warmth that would not leave. One day, a small boy got lost among the sand dunes, chasing a makeshift kite. Evan ran after him, shouting, but the desert was wide and the wind harsh. When he reached the boy, the princess had already arrived. She crouched beside him, her cloak wrapped around both of them like a protective shell. The boy looked up at her in awe, murmuring a question he did not fully understand. She bent down, her lips moving softly in her alien language, a gentle hum that seemed to calm the desert itself. Evan watched in silence, amazed that someone so powerful could show such delicate care that night. When the colony gathered around the fire for warmth, the rumors grew louder. People whispered that the princess was unstable, that humans were dangerous, that perhaps Evan had bewitched her in some mysterious way. Yet Evan could not hear them. He only thought about the child, about the way her hands had shielded him, and about the strange pull he felt toward her. Sometimes, he caught himself wondering what had happened in her past to make her silent for so long. Was it grief, shame, fear, or perhaps a lesson she had learned that words were too heavy to carry? He did not know, but he felt it every time she followed him across the desert plains. There was history in her silence, and he could feel it like an invisible thread tying them together. As days became weeks, Evan realized that her silence was not emptiness. It was communication in its own way. Each step she took behind him, each glance, each faint gesture, told him more than any words could. She trusted him in her quiet way. She allowed him to see her strength and her fragility together. One evening, Evan climbed the ridge alone, looking out over the desert. The sky was painted with red and purple, and the sand reflected the colors like liquid fire. He saw her standing there, a pale figure against the horizon. For the first time, he felt the weight of loneliness in her silence. She did not belong in the colony, and yet she stayed. She followed him, always a few steps behind, a quiet guardian in a world that had no room for mercy. He realized then that the rumors did not matter. The colony did not understand, and they would never understand. The strange bond forming in the silence between a human and an alien princess. It was not about prophecy or loyalty or destiny. It was about seeing someone, truly seeing them, without fear or judgment. Even when words were impossible, and for Evan, that was enough. For the first time in months, he felt hope rising in his chest, a hope that maybe, just maybe, the future could be different. That perhaps humans and Vale were not destined to be enemies forever. That in silence, even two species could understand each other. As night fell over Outpost Delta, Evan sat on the edge of the ridge and looked at her glowing eyes. She did not move, she did not speak, but she was there. And somehow, in the quiet desert under the star-filled sky, Evan knew that the real story had not begun yet. The princess was following him, and one day, he suspected, she would speak. It was a cold morning when the silence shattered. The desert sun had barely risen, and the colony still smelled of metal and dust from the night. Evan walked toward the main antenna tower, toolbox in hand, unaware that danger was already moving in shadows. The princess, as always, followed a few steps behind, her cloak fluttering like pale water. No one expected the attack. The rogue Vale warbands struck fast, like predators born from darkness. Explosions ripped through the colony, throwing metal and sand into the air. Alarms blared. People screamed. Children ran blindly through the chaos, some falling and crying in the dust. The air was filled with the smell of burning fuel and fear. Evan froze, heart pounding. He knew that without sending a distress signal from the tower, the colony had no chance. He ran toward it, climbing the broken metal ladder with trembling hands, ignoring the heat that seared his skin and the sparks that flew from damaged circuits. Halfway up, a shock trooper landed in front of him. Its armor glinted with red energy, blades humming with dangerous light. Evan's stomach dropped. There was no way he could fight. He had no weapons, no training, only raw fear. Evan, a voice suddenly shouted. He barely registered it before a massive force slammed into the trooper from behind. Sparks and shards of metal flew in every direction. The princess had leaped into the fight. Her armor cracked under the impact, revealing glowing veins of energy beneath her skin. Her hands moved in blinding arcs of blue light. The air buzzed with her strength. Evan watched, frozen, as she tore through the enemy soldiers with precision and power. Each movement was deadly, but there was also care. She did not strike recklessly. She avoided civilians, shielded children, and never harmed anything unnecessary. Every blow she struck was calculated, perfect, necessary. Go, she shouted, her voice breaking the silence for the first time in years. Evan's head spun. Her voice, real words. After all the time, after all the silence, she had spoken. And it was for him. He did not waste a second. He climbed the tower faster, hands bleeding from the metal, fear gripping every nerve. He sent the distress signal as the warband tried to reach him. Every second felt like a lifetime. Each heartbeat was a drum of dread. When he climbed down, the colony was a battlefield. Fires burned across rooftops. Soldiers lay injured or unconscious. People shouted for help, and in the center of it all stood the princess, bruised and bleeding, energy flickering from her hands. Her eyes glowed bright, almost painfully so. As she held back the last of the attacking soldiers, Evan ran to her, reaching her side. She did not move from her position until the last enemy fell, and even then she barely breathed. Her armor was shattered in places, exposing scratches and cuts, but she stood tall, a silent giant among the chaos. "Are you okay?" Evan asked, fear and awe mixing in his voice. She did not answer immediately. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Finally, she looked at him, eyes glowing softly. It was not just light. It was exhaustion, relief, and something he could not name. Gratitude, maybe. Or something deeper. Evan realized then that everything had changed. The princess had risked herself, her life, to protect him and the colony. She had spoken for the first time in years, not to a council, not to soldiers, not to her empire, but for him. The colony began to recover slowly. Medics and human engineers worked together, patching wounds and rebuilding damaged structures. The princess allowed humans to help her, letting bandages cover cuts and burns she never complained about. For the first time, she tolerated human closeness, even though words were still rare. That night, when the dust settled and fires burned low, Evan sat on the ridge, looking out over the desert. The princess sat silently a few steps behind him, still bruised, still exhausted, yet somehow unbroken. Her first words hung in the air, fragile and new. Go. They were simple, but they meant everything. They had saved him, saved the colony, and changed the balance of trust between species. For Evan, it was more than just a command. It was a bridge, a connection across years of fear, silence, and doubt. In that moment, he understood why she had followed him all along, not as a spy, not as a threat, but as someone who had seen a human, one human, stand in courage and care. And she had chosen to act, the desert night wrapped around them. The colony would live, and somewhere deep inside him, Evan felt the faintest spark of understanding that silence could protect, that words could wait, and that sometimes one moment of courage could change everything. And the princess, quiet again but no longer distant, had begun her own journey toward trust, one step, one word, one life at a time. Days passed slowly after the attack. The colony was in ruins, yet life refused to give up. Smoke still drifted from burned buildings, and the smell of scorched metal lingered in every corner. Evan worked alongside other technicians, patching broken antennas and restoring the fragile power network. He noticed her watching from the ridge again, silent as ever, though the glow in her eyes seemed dimmer now, tired from battle. She had allowed humans to tend to her wounds, cuts across her arms and shoulders, bruises under her armor, scratches across her face. She never complained. She never spoke, but Evan could feel the weight of her gratitude, heavy and quiet, pressing into the desert air. It was a different kind of presence now, softer, yet more commanding than before. Late one evening, after most colonists had gone to sleep, Evan sat near the medbay where she rested. He wanted to ask her questions, but he knew better. She had broken her silence once. That word had been enough. Anything more might push her away. So he waited, just sitting, listening to the faint hum of the machinery and the occasional crack of the settling walls. After hours passed, she shifted slightly and opened her glowing eyes. For the first time, she looked directly at him, not just with her vision, but with her attention fully on him, like she had been holding it back all these years. Her hands, bandaged and trembling slightly, rested on her knees. Her armor glinted under the medbay lights, still damaged but somehow regal even in its brokenness. "You wonder why I follow," she said softly. Her voice was strange, musical, and hesitant, as though unused for decades. Evan's heart stopped. The words were real, full sentences, not commands, not warnings, real words meant for him alone. He nodded, unsure if he should speak. He had waited years, almost, and now, hearing her voice, he could barely breathe. "My world believes humans are soulless," she continued, her glowing eyes never leaving his, "but I saw a human soldier die to save veiled children in the war. He gave them water. He gave them hope. He died smiling." Evan's chest tightened. He had never known about this soldier, never known who had sacrificed himself during the war, but somehow her words felt like a bridge from the past, connecting to worlds he barely understood. Her voice trembled, fragile but firm. "That soldier was your brother, Evan." Evan's head spun. He had lost his brother in the war. He had never known how he died, only that he had not returned from the ambushed convoy. His stomach turned, grief mixing with shock. His throat tightened, and tears burned his eyes. "My people killed him," she whispered, and his last words were, "Please don't hate them." Evan fell silent, unable to speak. He could barely breathe. She had seen it all. She had known the pain he carried in silence, and now, after years of quiet observation, she had shared it with him, not to hurt him, but to show him truth, to carry the weight of sorrow together. Across worlds, for a long moment, neither moved. Only the hum of the medbay, the distant wind, and the occasional creak of the colony filled the silence. Then, slowly, Evan reached out and touched her hand. It was warm, though bandaged, and she did not pull away. For the first time, he felt a connection deeper than words, a bond forged in shared grief and silent understanding. "You remembered him," Evan whispered finally, voice cracking. "You knew him." Her glowing eyes softened. "I knew what he gave. I saw it, and I could not stay silent any longer. You deserved to know." Tears slid down his cheeks. All the fear, anger, and loneliness of the past months of the war, of loss, of silence between species, pressed into him. Yet alongside it, a strange relief emerged. Finally, someone, even an alien princess, had acknowledged his grief, had honored it. She remained silent after that, words spent, energy fading from her glowing veins. But Evan understood now. The princess had followed him not out of duty or curiosity or prophecy. She had followed him because she had seen the humanity in him. In humans, in life that could be fragile yet brave, broken yet shining. And for Evan, that realization was more powerful than any weapon or empire could ever be. She had given him truth, and truth, he realized, was stronger than fear, stronger than silence, stronger than war. That night, he did not sleep. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand, listening to her steady breathing. And for the first time, he felt the quiet weight of hope. Hope that humans and the Veil could be more than enemies. That perhaps, in silence and in words, they could understand each other. The princess had spoken, and the world had changed forever. The colony had begun to recover, though its scars were deep. Buildings still leaned at strange angles. Smoke curled from broken chimneys, and the wind carried the faint scent of burned metal and dust across the plains. Evan moved through it all, repairing antennas, helping injured colonists, and making sure that life fragile and stubborn could continue. And through every task, the princess followed, always a few steps behind, silent yet present, like a shadow that refused to fade. The days passed slowly, but Evan noticed something different in her. She moved with less caution, allowed humans to tend her wounds, even let him sit near her without stepping back. Her silence had weight, yes, but now it seemed softer, lighter, as if she were testing the world and testing him at the same time. And in that quiet, Evan began to understand something profound. She was choosing him, not because of orders or duty, but because of trust. It was late afternoon when the Council of Colonists approached. They wanted to honor her, to acknowledge her courage during the attack. Soldiers stood stiffly, humans and Veil alike, while Evan watched from a short distance. He could feel her energy buzzing faintly, a silent pulse of something alive and powerful. He could tell she wanted to leave, to disappear, yet she stayed. After the formalities, she asked to speak with Evan alone. He followed her to the ridge above the colony, where the wind could carry away words too heavy for others. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, and the sun was a low ball of fire, painting the sky with reds and golds. She stood at the edge, cloak fluttering in the wind, armor cracked, body tired but unbowed. Evan approached carefully, heart hammering. He had waited for this moment for years, not knowing what he would say, not knowing what he would feel, but certain that nothing would ever be the same. For a long time, neither spoke. The wind whispered across the ridge. The distant colony buzzed with life and recovery. And then she turned to him, her glowing eyes steady, and said the words she had avoided for years. "I am sorry." 2 simple words, but in them lay a universe of meaning. Years of silence, years of observation, years of fear and restraint, all poured into that sentence. Evan could feel the weight of her guilt, her empathy, and her courage all at once. He stepped closer, unsure what to do. Should he speak? Should he remain silent? The words struck him harder than any battle, harder than any loss he had ever known. He had expected explanations, stories, orders, or warnings. But this was different. This was human and alien, painful and healing. All at once, "You don't have to apologize for a whole empire," he whispered, voice low and trembling. "But thank you for saying it." For the first time, she allowed herself to relax. Her shoulders eased, and the glowing light in her eyes softened into something more human, more tender. She had been carrying centuries of expectation, judgment, and war inside her. And now she had shared just a single piece of it, enough to make him understand, enough to start healing the gap between their worlds. They stood together in silence after that, listening to the wind sweep across the desert. Evan felt a strange calm, the kind that comes only after storms have passed and the worst has been survived. He realized that this one sentence, so small and fragile, had the power to change everything. She did not speak again that day. She did not need to. The apology had bridged the unspoken distance between them. It had shifted the fragile balance of trust, hope, and understanding. Evan could feel it in every step they took, in every glance exchanged, in every beat of the quiet desert air. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. The colony glowed faintly in the distance. Evan looked at her and knew that she had chosen to act, to care, to trust. And in return, he had chosen to forgive, to protect, and to believe in something greater than fear. For years, silence had defined her. For years, mystery had shaped their connection. And now, in one sentence, she had offered him truth, understanding, and a promise, not just to him, but to the fragile future of humans and Vale alike. As the first stars blinked awake in the darkening sky, Evan reached for her hand. She let him. Their fingers touched, human and alien, fragile and strong. And in that quiet connection, he understood something simple and profound. Sometimes, one sentence, spoken with courage and honesty, could change the course of two worlds. The princess's apology was not just words. It was the beginning of trust, the beginning of hope, the beginning of a future that neither human nor Vale could have imagined alone. And for Evan, standing on the ridge with the desert stretching endlessly around them, it was enough.